Good morning. Welcome to FICS Chat. We shall be discussing today how to write the chapter on results and discussion. Now, like the other chapters, there is no one correct way of writing this chapter. There may be a number of ways of doing it, but there is no one way. So the important thing is in trying to organize this chapter, make sure that you organize the content of this chapter according to the research objectives of your study. So in any case, before we start, there's need to clarify certain things. Whether or not this chapter should be written separately or not. Some books about writing the thesis actually do not insist on having a separate chapter on results and discussions. Some, however, treat these two in a separate chapter. This program attaches importance to the results and discussions, and so therefore we are suggesting that we provide options to write separate chapter for this particular aspect. To be able to write the results and discussions properly, many authors of books on thesis writing want to make sure that certain questions are dealt with. We at the FICS, or FICS, here at FICS Chat, are concerned about presenting results according to your research framework, as we discussed in episode 7. The variables that you studied must be reflected in your thesis. Remember that series of statements that we have? That the variables that you study in the thesis must indicate at least two variables that can be tested and must be reflected in the title of your thesis and all the way down to the recommendations. In writing the results, you should respond positively to the following. First, are the results of your experiments or surveys or other works clearly presented and captured? Second, are the displays such as graphs, tables, and figures uniform in style and numbered? Third, are the major trends or findings outlined? You know, most authors of books on thesis writing say you should not be discussing the implications of your study or implications of your results or findings while you are reporting them. You know what? They are right. You cannot discuss the implications of something that you are just reporting. So when you say report the results, report the results. And when you say discuss the results, discuss the results. And then, of course, when you report the implications of the results, or the discussion of the results, then that is when you do it. In your discussion after you have reported your findings, try to respond to this question. Are you discussing your own findings in terms of their implications for one of 4 areas of possible contributions, particularly with respect to modifying or extending theory or practice. I'd like to clarify this further. When you are discussing the results of your study, always consider the implications. Results of your study should have implications, but it is up to you to identify what important implications there might be. Okay? All right, now let's have a quick look at the summary of the thesis. Some theses will have a separate chapter on the summary. We are not insisting that you should have a separate chapter on the summary, but we are suggesting that you must have a major section in your thesis that takes care of the summary. Probably after results and discussion, you should have a summary. In any case, for your thesis, it is suggested that you write the summary in a separate chapter, if you wish to. The content of the chapter depends on your research objectives. In other words, the way you state your summary must reflect response to the objectives. Many times, you will make very important discoveries or observations while doing your thesis. It is tempting to include these in the summary of your results, the important observations you made. Well, if such observations are not related to your research objectives, then you may just don't include them in the observations because they are not part of your thesis. But I think that is the more important point. You may have, every graduate student will say that they made important or significant observations in their studies. And they will cite the results indicating that they observed new things or important things. That may be correct. But in your specific case, if you do not have a specific objective in your thesis that includes such observations, then you should not really include them. They serve only to confuse matters. I hope that is clear for this purpose. Okay, so we have made our point there. So perhaps you should join us again next week in our discussion of the topic, writing the chapter on conclusion and recommendations. This is a very important chapter and people are waiting to discuss the points that we have here in this particular chapter. So until next week, thank you very much.